It was actually interesting to read, so I think.
That's awesome. Well, I think you guys are on the right direction. I mean, this is way better information, and it's a plan. It's realistic. I way rather sit down and have somebody say, like, you're.
We're good? Okay. Welcome to our city council meetings this evening for Wednesday, April 9th. We do quickly need to do a community development and renewal agency meeting before our general meeting. That should just take a few minutes here. So we'll call this to order. We'll look for approval of the minutes, item 2.1.
I'll make a motion to have the minutes of April 9th, 2025 be prepared and distributed to each member of the CDA board. The board will have 10 days to review the minutes and submit any changes to the secretary. If after 10 days there are no changes, the minutes will stand approved. If there are changes, the process will be followed until all changes are made and the board is in agreement.
Motion by Sherry.
Second.
Second by Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move to item 3.1, consideration of an amendment to the tax increment participation agreement with Elevated Acquisitions for the Commons at Harriman Town Center. Blake.
Can I ask one question before you begin?
Yes.
Is this in relation to item 8.2 on the consent agenda,
Yes.
or 8.3?
Very similar item, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you. So yes, this is the proposed first amendment to the participation agreement with Elevated Acquisitions. This project location is the corner near CVS on 134th and Mountain View Corridor. And the original agreement was approved December 11th. This was part of an incentive package that was approved for the Commons at Harriman Town Center project, including sales tax, impact fees, and tax increment financing from their CDA, which is why we're here. And you can see on the text, it's a little bit of added text that's underlined and in red. I don't know why the whole thing's underlined. It should only be the red text, but this was requested by the developer because they're finalizing their financing, and the financial group that they're working with wanted to guarantee that they would be able to receive the payment from the master developer with no issues with assigning the agreement over to them. So it's a very simple change, but needed in order for things to continue moving forward down there, which they also plan to break ground mid next month. So be happy to answer any questions. Todd worked through this with them, so he probably is better at most of the questions than I would be.
That's my only question is for our attorney. Worst case scenario, are we protected?
Yeah, this was just a mechanism to, kind of a requirement from their side of the table. I didn't see any issues with how it would affect the city. It shouldn't create any liability, that sort of thing.
Okay. I'll look for a motion then.
I can see it on your face. Say it.
Sorry. So, philosophically, we're already doing something that I don't love, is the idea we're giving taxpayer money directly to the developer. Okay? We decided not to do that in the auto mall, for example, right? We didn't give it to the developer. We allowed it to be assigned out to the entities that are coming in to generate the sales tax revenue. What I question about this, and it's not necessarily an objection, just articulating the thoughts, is this assignment. Is there any requirement here that an assignment has to be itself a tax generating entity? Does that make sense? Like, if this whole CDA is generating sales tax revenue, the person that this receipt could be assigned to may not be a tax-generating entity. Does that make sense? And that's ultimately the part that I would have the objection to, is I don't want CDA funds being directed or assigned to an entity that isn't generating sales tax revenue for the city.
Not how it's written right now. It goes to this group.
Yeah, and that's my question at this point is, should we have some requirement, or should we try to negotiate some requirement that suggest that's how it needs to go. That's my biggest objection, so.
I can say the purpose for this one is the big box retailer is pushing for this. So
Yeah, and
philosophically, there's the other side, but yeah, for this specific case, that's what's happening here.
I get it, in that case, there's no objection, and that's fine. But there's no language in here that would prohibit my worst-case scenario suggestion from happening.
I totally understand where you're coming from. I don't know, I think it's tough to go back and try to renegotiate something
I think we're too late now.
that's a core of what was already done, for one. But
When amendments come up,
yeah, but my thinking past that, my immediate thought is, well, the issue is that it's sales tax money, right? It's not impact fees and this, all the stuff lumped in. It's the one thing, as I've said many times with this stuff, it's the one thing that we want and need that we have to give away in order to hopefully get it.
exactly.
Right? And that's the difficult part. Where the agreement's set up to go to the developer, it's supposed to help them incentivize all these entities come and produce that. But they could use that to put in the roads and whatever else that don't necessarily produce the sales tax, but offsets costs for them. There's a number of ways for them to use it rather than just tying their hands to use it for somebody who's paying sales tax when there's another user that maybe is service oriented, but it helps the others. It's tough for me to see that. My concern was more that this is coming in so quickly, to assign it to someone else. My reading of this means, what if we want to sell this thing? It goes to someone else, right? When we enter into this MDA, we're entering it to you, your group. The way that they proposed it to us was selling us on them and what they do, and right? To me, that's what this says, is only a few months later, hey, we might want to sell this thing and want to make sure this can go with it.
Yeah, and to clarify, they are remaining the developer for the project. I think the language is that it's pretty clear. It's just how those reimbursements are going to be assigned, and that's where they're kind of splitting it from the developer to whoever's being paid those reimbursements, and that's the purpose of this language being added.
Yeah, the big box coming in doesn't want a middleman.
Right.
I get it. They want those rights, whatever that is, assigned directly to them, and they collect it directly. No problem with that. I totally support that happening, no questions. Because that is a large sales tax generating entity. What I don't want this to do is go to a tax preparation place. Right? I don't want it to go to a...
Well, I don't think you have to incentivize
Nail
those people
salon.
to come in, right?
I don't know. And again, maybe probably a mountain out of a molehill thing, but it's the whole responsibility of the CDA board to create development of tax-generating entities inside that development zone, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. And so I'm raising the question. In principle and in theory, what they're trying to do, I'm supportive of, but I can't vote for this without some language that would do that. That's where I just stand right now. So if there's an opportunity to create some language that would do that, I'm great, but at the moment, I'm a no, so.
This has gone back and forth between you and them.
So, Steve, at least for me, my perspective is the ecosystem, right? My economics training is just that, the economy, right? There's those symbiotic relationships. Yep, there's going to be some service providers in there, as we just talked about in the work meeting. They don't produce themselves directly any sales tax.
We know
right?
there's going to be at least a couple, because we already talked about that, the outbuildings,
That's what I just
right?
said. There are service providers that don't produce any actual
Banks.
retail sales tax, right?
Credit unions, yeah.
But they do bring people there that are going to stop and spend money. There's that symbiotic relationship, right? I just call it, it's an organism that needs all those things to support itself.
If it were my organization, I wouldn't want to be giving TIF to to incentivize somebody who's not gonna be paying any
Yeah, I mean,
tax
the way,
increment,
the
right?
way that this, the way this is written in the original agreement is that it goes to the developer, and, yeah, it's up to them, and I would selfishly, if I put myself in their shoes, as I tell my clients, knowing what I know, if I were you, if I know enough about you and what you wanna do, here's what I would do. Yeah, I'm gonna use that for the bigger ones, and those others generally are the infill, but that's, yeah, I get where you're coming from, but
Yeah.
I'm okay.
I think we're too far down there.
Yeah, and I'm
And
okay with
I
them making that determination
fully understand.
for the entire project. I'm more concerned that we don't end up with a partner we don't want. It's more mine. It sounds like,
Me too.
right, we're okay there, they remain, and I read that, that's why I said worst case scenario. That's my question to you. I get where you're coming from, but I also understand
I would, I guess I would just make this statement for the rest of the council too, is the idea that an agreement is too far down the road to adjust for important priorities of this council, I hope that we're never in that case, right? That we would continue to advocate for those things. Anytime an amendment is proposed, we should be reviewing it and looking for things that we would like to amend as well.
I agree, and that's not what I'm saying with this at all.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Thank you. Take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R2025-02, approving the First Amendment to the Sales Tax Increment Participation Agreement with Elevated Acquisitions LLC.
Second.
Motion by Teddy, second by Jared. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
I'll vote yes. That motion carries. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We don't need to reset, right? We're good? Okay, we're gonna move on to our general meeting at this time. Before we get into everything else, I need a motion to remove 8.4 and 9.1 from the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with a Pledge of Allegiance tonight by Joe Ross.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Joe. Any council comments or recognitions tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. At this time, audience members may bring any item within the city's purview to the city council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comments for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@harriman.gov or by visiting harriman.gov/agendas and minutes, where there's a link to fill out an online public comment form. Your statement will be incorporated into the public record. Do you have any public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our council or city council reports. We'll start with Jared.
Have my finance committee meeting tomorrow to review we're just receiving the presentation of the budget from the chief. We haven't seen it yet. That'll be one of the things we talk about, is giving us information ahead of time. I think 1 week is bad. I got the email with the packet yesterday, so we'll have the presentation, we'll have a brief discussion, and then I imagine we'll schedule another meeting to then review it all. But here we go, budget season.
You, Teddy.
We had a sewer district board about 2 weeks ago, I suppose, and nothing new to report on that. You can still flush your toilets, so that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Teddy. Sherry. Steve.
Nothing.
Okay, and I do not have anything tonight as well. So we'll move on to 8, our consent agenda. Look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda as written.
Motion by Teddy, second by Sherry. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry? Steve?
As per my previous comments, no.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Steve. And I'll vote yes, that motion carries. So we'll skip 9.1 to go to 9.2. Consideration to proceed with the Rose Creek floodplain update. Jonathan, good to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We'll jump right in here, and of course, this is along Rose Creek. There's several floodplains throughout the city, but of course, today we want to talk about Rose Creek specifically. This is a really boring slide, so I'll make it quick. So Blake's the floodplain administrator for Harriman City, and that's codified. And he is required to, and the city essentially is required to follow the requirements of the NFIP, and of course our city code, which essentially means if you're in a floodplain or a special flood hazard area, we're required to follow, or there's special rules for development. And so of course it requires some special regulation that otherwise wouldn't be required. And so I just wanted to pull out of that slide there. So this is just a snippet of Rose Creek on this figure here. Rose Creek is largely a Zone A. Now, you'll see, well, a Zone A, and I'll just explain that, it's a nominal area of the special flood hazard area, or the floodplain. It was conservatively estimated based on nominal data, like topography, and that was it. There was no detailed information. However, you can see in that slide, there's a sliver downstream and a sliver upstream of this Zone A, and they're small pieces. These ones that were a little more skinny are small pieces along the frontage of a development where the developer did a detailed study so they could kind of better understand where the floodplain truly would be. Got it submitted to FEMA, they approved it, and of course you can see how it's much skinnier where the detailed study was complete. Rose Creek is primarily a Zone A, this bigger, wider area. Back in 2014, we did a tentative study to kind of see what would happen if we had a detailed study for Rose Creek. And we estimated it would remove around 60 parcels or so out of the floodplain. And I'll just iterate, it doesn't mean that there's any more or less risk to these parcels that are removed from the floodplain as simply as a result of this study. It just means that we're doing a detailed study and being more representative of where the floodplain actually should be. So of course, staff's recommendation is that we move forward with memorializing a detailed study and change the floodplain accordingly to what it would be called a Zone AE, then removing them out. And so it would alleviate some property owners from additional regulation as well as staff time to do that regulation. And I just wanted to give a quick example of what regulation that might be. So if a structure is within a floodplain, and there's a handful throughout the city, that structure is essentially deemed an incompliant structure, and if they came into the city with an application to improve their home, improve their basement, do an addition, even if it's just even to the inside of their home, if the valuation of those improvements are 50% or more, they would either be unable to proceed with that permit, or they would have to come whole to FEMA requirements, and they would not be able to proceed. Or they do a study to show that they're out of the floodplain. So anyway, that's just an example of a special regulation that exists when you're in the floodplain. Now, of course, again, like I'm stating here, handful of those properties would have been removed from the floodplain.
Are they also required to obtain flood insurance in a Zone A?
Correct. So mortgage companies and FEMA and the NFIP don't see anything different from a Zone AE from a Zone A, from a insurance requirement.
It's expensive insurance.
Yeah. And I will say mortgage companies have the discretion on how they manage that. So if the floodplain touches their property, not their structure, some mortgage companies will require it, some won't.
But Fannie and Freddie don't have any options there.
If it touches the structure, that's when it's not an option.
Yeah.
But if they want to kind of be at their risk averse, they can say, hey, I want mortgage, or I want flood insurance, they can say that. But This would essentially pull 60 parcels in its entirety out of the floodplain.
Is this a continual thing where they reevaluate every so many years and that floodplain can move and adjust as such today, right?
That is a potential. Now, the state's kind of shifting how they do that. But yes, that is historically what's happened. But the last time they did, this was in 2009, I think, when the Zone A was initially put together and effective. Yeah, 2009, it says it right there. So, of course, we're proposing to do so and to do this the tune of around $32,000. Now, of course, we can circle back to the city council before we memorialize this in case there's any concerns at that time. We do not anticipate additional parcels will get into the floodplain as a result of this study, but of course, we would circle back to the council prior to moving forward with that, so.
And I think it's important to note, the study is going to show where the actual floodplain is. So if all of a sudden a structure is in that floodplain,
Yeah.
it would be good for that owner to know that.
Yeah.
Drawing this line doesn't make it so, it's just identifying where it is.
Yeah. We want to start notifying these residents that are in the floodplain that if they come in for a permit, they have special requirements. We would prefer do that after the study. So that's kind of our intent here with this effort. So, of course, the initial option, well, before I guess I get there, you can kind of see all the green parcels are the ones that would get removed. The yellow ones, of course, would stay. Those, even after the analysis, would stay in the properties would stay in the floodplain. And that's just because those properties span the floodplain. So,
Now, does this, I see it affects our property. What, are we paying flood insurance on that property for any structures in that area, or is it?
So I'll be honest, I do not know the answer to that question. I'll tell you what the NFIP would require is if there's a structure that it would require flood insurance. And whether of course, this is if you have a mortgage is when it would be required. Now, I don't think there's anything holding here that would essentially require that, but we could, if the city so decided, they could do flood insurance. Anyway, so I've
Come up to where the structure.
this was a great, go ahead, Nathan, sorry.
I was just saying that, again, because you're talking about Butterfield Park, we don't have anything down in that area where we would anticipate. So the study would at least identify how narrow that flood channel is. And as a city, my recommendation would be to stay away from it.
Would it make sense to parcel out that to where we identify?
It could in the future, once this is done, we could do that if we wanted to, if we were running into issues with the requirements for flood insurance in an area that's, I don't know, 20 feet
Yeah,
or higher
we're
above.
significantly higher than
Correct,
the.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's, again, it is the point of this whole exercise, is we're significantly higher than what it's shown in the floodplain, when in fact it's pretty incised where the true floodplain we anticipate to be.
Could also the residents say on Rodeo Drive there, that back into that, they have a significant drop from their actual lot?
Off the back.
Yeah, they likewise would. Now, whether they have a structure down in that area would then be another question, right? So if they have a mortgage on that, it would be up to the mortgage company's discretion on whether flood insurance would be required.
Or zoning could allow a parcel separation or something, whatever their zoning is, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
This has been a great night. It's not very often I get to talk about floodplains and stormwater.
All your dreams came true.
You didn't wear a tie though, so.
Yeah.
The ask is to approve the study that could potentially remove Harriman residents from floodplain restrictions and regulation and.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of be open about what the potentials are here and wanted to touch base with the council first before we proceeded. So of course, those are your options.
What was the count on the number of potential residential properties again?
58
58.
in the report. When I did a count, I counted 60, so we'll
They're
find out for sure.
technically in the floodplain or being removed from the,
That could potentially.
We anticipate 58 will be removed from the floodplain.
brilliant.
For 32K for us, right?
32,000, correct.
Probably will save them
So much
way
money.
more than that, a savings to our residents if they're
They're having to pay
if
flood
they're paying
insurance.
flood
Goodness
insurance.
gracious.
Yeah,
And it's accurate, it's making it accurate.
yeah, no, it's good.
That'll also save them money.
Huge.
Yep.
That is a big part of it.
Of course, we obviously recommend with option one to proceed with the study. And then, of course, the option two would, we just leave it alone and continue regulating as we have been. So.
Okay, I'll look for a motion. Thank you, JP.
Are you on motion?
Yes, please.
Motion to approve to proceed with a study to update the Rose Creek floodplain.
Motion by Sherry,
Second.
second by Steve. Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion carries. 9.3, approval of a memorandum of understanding between Harriman City and Land Reserve. You taking this with Wendy gone?
Wendy's still on, she can jump in whenever she wants. So,
I think she's off.
She did get off.
I'm just going to run through the MOU between Harriman City and Land Reserve. Of course, this location is out on the future portion of 6400 West, south of Midas Creek. We'll see that a little bit more closely here in a second. But just to kind of preview everything, this is part of the overall property swap for open space for Harriman and some properties that Harriman owns or will own, swapping around to potentially have space for a potential athletic complex on the green space. So over on the right, the legend, you can kind of see for the public consumption where things are at. City to developer for Big Bend Cove means city currently owns it. We're going to include that in the swap for the developer. But the piece that we're talking about here is the blue and the green piece, are the blue and the green pieces. So a little bit more closely looking at it here. I flipped north to the right, so turn your head if you need to, but this is how it fit better on the slide. So this is the Creek Ridge development, and this kind of shows the areas that are discussed and included in the Creek Ridge Master Development Agreement. But this MOU is going to propose amending that and outlining some of the details of the swaps and what's going to happen. You'll see this slide again at the end that shows some of the changes with units and items like that. So key terms, Land Reserve will convey the park property to Harriman. That was the blue piece that we saw on the last slide, plus a little 3/4 acre piece that's out by Olympia at the very end of Harriman Boulevard. That piece will be used for detention for the U111 project and the Olympia Commercial Center. The other key terms are amending the Creek Ridge MDA. So we can see here they're going to not lose the requirement to provide open space, but they get credit for it with the land transfers because this open space is really just shifting across the street to where residential development is currently approved. They are reducing the commercial acreage requirement. The current MDA requires 7 proposals to reduce it down to 3.7, and so 3.7, and so a couple bullets below that, you'll see 27 single-family residential units. That's because that area A has 8 units per acre. 3.3 units is approximately 27 single-family units. There's also a requirement the city has to spend $2 million on a park, and that's going to get removed from this MDA. The other items are that if that park area, the blue area that we saw on the last map and see on the next map, that can only be developed if it is developed as single-family residential or open space parks. So no multifamily townhomes, condos, or anything like that. City is responsible to pay any of the rollback taxes to the county, and the covenant not to sue for Kennecott Copper is also included in there as part of an agreement that the current property owner has with Kennecott. So the final unit summary count here is Area A and Area B, or Area C and Area B are currently built out, can't add any more units. You can see the Copperfield surplus parcel that'll come to the city, be used for stormwater. The Creek Ridge Park property will be transferred over, and the green area will become Harriman's, the blue area will become the developers, and they'll be able to put 136 single-family detached residential units. And then North of that, one other thing that I didn't include on the last list, didn't have enough bullet spots, is we have to guarantee access for Midas Creek, the trail, and then Area A has to have access into the Midas Creek Trail system. And then Area A will go from currently approved 1,365 units to 1,392. Those will all also be single-family, but they can be attached, just not apartments. And then the right-of-way for 6400 West will also be part of the agreement that Harriman will receive that right-of-way free of cost, but Harriman will be responsible for constructing that roadway improvement, which is how the agreement's currently written anyway.
Just to be clear, in Area A, 450 of those can be apartments.
450 are apartments, yes, thank you. I had a cheat
But
sheet
they
on my
can't
desk
do
and I
any
didn't bring it.
more than 450. That's
that's-
the max they can do
Capped at
of
450
apartments.
total apartment units.
Which is what the current agreement is.
That's
not
what the current
changing,
agreement has, yes.
maintaining that maximum.
And as we discussed before, the commercial property, although it's allowed to be reduced to 3.7 acres, we did build in that if they have the opportunity to develop more commercial than 3.7, then their units will shrink accordingly to that 8 units per acre. So we tried to build that in to give them that flexibility.
And there's flexibility for that commercial that it can move where they need it to. So as they develop and they identify a location, there's not going to be a big process for them to go through and locate it in a place that logically makes sense.
That's such a, actually, it's a good accommodation there, because that gives them the ability to be flexible with that land. If they build commercial on it, they get fewer units. If they need to move it over here, they can. If they don't, then they get to build that many units. Like, it's just total flexibility. I think is great. It's a good
Former
solution.
agreement said that they had to have an acre here and an acre there
Yeah.
arbitrarily on the map.
Yeah, this puts it all together and stuff. I think it's a good deal.
So yeah, if this item is approved tonight, the next steps are the MDA amendment and the proposed Creek Ridge Cove MDA, which would entitle the blue area for residential, and the general plan amendment for those would all go to Planning Commission next week, and then back to City Council April 23rd for final decision with all of the other property swaps and rezones and general plan amendments that go along with that, which have been approved at Planning Commission, or recommended from the Planning Commission already.
Motion to approve the memorandum
Can
of
I just make one, sorry.
understanding.
Just really for public consumption, again, just because we're in a meeting where there was some misunderstanding about what a memorandum of understanding is. This is just a memorandum of understanding. So developers are clear, city council is clear, and public is clear. This is not a formalized agreement. This is simply a statement saying that this is the things we've discussed. It just formally puts it on a document that says these are the things we've discussed, just so everybody doesn't think that this is getting approved tonight. This is simply just a document.
Framework under which we will have further
Exactly.
conversation.
Yeah, memorandum of understandings are non-binding understandings of what's and because there were so many moving parts, we wanted to memorialize it with Land Reserve and the Olympia Group to make sure that with this complicated potential transaction, that we know what all those moving parts are and what the obligations of each party are.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's the way to go for sure, but I just want people to understand it's not a done agreement.
Not a binding agreement, yep. Okay, Jared?
Between Harriman City and Land Reserve LLC.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, that's the remainder of my motion.
Motion by Jared,
Second,
second by Steve. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion carries.
What happens when you get interrupted?
That brings us to the end of our meeting tonight. Future meetings, Planning Commission meeting on the 16th, 7 o'clock. Our next city council meeting is on the 23rd at 7 o'clock. Our spring cleanup is happening next week at Butterfield Park. Look for details. You should have got a flyer about that in the mail.
Some of us will be down in St. George next week.
Yep. It will be.
Absolutely will not be.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, real quick.
yes.
9.4, on there, it shows as an item
Yeah, we did.
that council continued from last meeting, but the applicant requested it be removed. But because council had continued it to this meeting, we showed it on the agenda with the statement that it was removed, simply so that
Oh,
in
you
20
put it on
years,
there.
if
Okay.
somebody goes to last meeting and sees that it was continued, not to say that I've done this here, but then when you go to find where it went, you never find it. We're just trying to create a record as to what happened to it.
Sorry, my bad. I was like, but it's on the agenda, but it's on the
That,
agenda.
that's why it's
Got it.
just
Got ya.
for a record-keeping purpose.
Do you need to speak about it or close it out or nothing? Okay.
Sorry. I was
No,
just-
you're fine, thank you.
I knew we'd done 9.1, but I was like, oh, 9.4.
And I was thinking the wrong one, so thank you. Okay, I need a motion now to go into closed. Does somebody have the, have a sheet?
No, you do it.
over.
Well, it's your hurrah, go.
Yeah. So I make a motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to go into closed meeting for the following purposes as provided in Utah State Code annotated section 52-4-205. Strategy sessions to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation. Strategy sessions to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, or to discuss a proposed development agreement, project proposal, or financing proposal related to the development of land owned by the city.
Okay, motion by Steve,
Second?
second by Sherry. Steve,
Can I vote against my own motion?
you could, it'd be awkward.
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared? Yep. I'll vote yes. We'll move into close. We'll move back into Fort Harriman conference room. We need Todd, Nathan, Blake. Do we need Chief?
Yes,
Yes, we do need Chief. We need Chief.
Really important for him to be there.
Jackie, is that it? Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
We totally need a bailiff for
So this is what happens when you don't set an appointment, you come find us, right?
I know, right?